Hey everybody, my name is Christian. I like Zelda. I'm joined by Omar Nakri. I think you like Zelda also. How are you?
Yeah, hey, I do also like Zelda, for sure.
Very nice. Do you like Nintendo Directs
I do, I like them a lot.
and you like the E3 one, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I like this year's presentation for sure.
Nice.
I enjoyed it.
So,
I'm glad we got it.
oh, for sure. It was very fun watching it with you and Kevin. How much of your enjoyment rests on that Breath of the Wild info at the end of it?
Um, you know, I think it was a tremendous trailer, but I think I've been talking to you about this a little bit. My heart still hurts about it being in 2022
Yeah,
rather than this year.
yeah,
And, maybe I'm even getting a little bit nervous if it doesn't even hit 2022.
yeah.
But I think it has to. But if I put all that aside, I do think it was a tremendous trailer.
Hell yeah. And we talked a little bit after we did our reactions of like, hey, maybe there's something else going on here. Maybe it's a bit more ambitious than it looks like. Uh,
Yeah.
I know you and I were both of us are big fans of Breath of the Wild, and seeing this and seeing the changes and the new direction and like art with the sky stuff and all that, it definitely looked like ideas you'd bring to a sequel. And I think part of that I definitely had some questions, as I'm sure everybody did, and I think a lot of it, the more I thought of it, and on the initial reveal, was that green sash Link. Um, Clearly different vibe, got long hair, chest is half out, he's got tattoos, he's got a Sekiro arm, like, there's something up with that Link, and so much so that I, at first, thought it could have been maybe Zelda, until I got a better look at it, but it definitely feels like they're drawing a line, right, between Blue Tunic
You're
Link and this Link.
you're talking about the Link that looks like he's dropping into Fortnite, right?
Yes, yes, the one who just
So
jumped off the battle bus.
they do show a blue tunic Zelda, or sorry, Link,
Yeah.
at some point in that trailer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you think those aren't the same? That's not that same Link just wearing a shirt
Yeah,
because the hair is different,
I mean, the hair is different. He's in a sky area. It's
right?
golden lighting everywhere. Like, it definitely feels like different vibes. And the skydiving Link also has, like, these sandals that look kind of ancient. And it just, there's a clear back and forth we're cutting to, right? Because I think the blue Link, blue tunic champion Link, when we see him and we see him in his hero poses using his powers in the world, he's he's got like, we see his face, we see him just rocking out is Link, and it's very much Breath of the Wild environment. And whenever we show green tunic Link, no face, very different area, I feel like they're trying to draw at least two separate areas of this game, right? They're definitely trying to divide it between Breath of the Wild and this new stuff, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll admit I've been thinking like until I saw your tweet yesterday, I've been thinking that was just straight up just Link still. The
Mm-hmm.
other guy dropping in because like I just thought that his hair looked different because of the he was dropping in
Mm-hmm.
and that was going nuts and shaggy in the sky.
Yeah.
But you're right. Even when he's on the ground of the sky world, it is a different haircut for sure.
Yeah. So I definitely thought there was something up, right? And then I ended up stumbling across Zelda speculation because, 10 minutes passed since the trailer was posted and the internet went off. Now, the theory that I want to talk to you about is that potentially we may be playing a good portion of Breath of the Wild 2 as not Link, and it's not Zelda either, but Ganon. Hearing that initially, what do you think of that?
You think that guy might be Ganon?
Yeah.
Um, I think that's crazy, but I don't know. Was there stuff in Breath of the Wild? I guess we should probably clarify. There might be Breath of the Wild spoilers here, but
Yeah, there's definitely going to be Breath of the Wild spoilers.
was there stuff in? Link in Breath of the Wild is the hero after 100 years, right?
Yes.
Like, okay, and we assume that the hero before that, the hero 100 years before Link, there is was it Link as well? And then he was
No.
sealed. It was a
So,
different one.
so the story you're talking about is when you meet Impa, right, in Kakariko, and she's showing you the mural, and it's like, this is how the Guardians were created and all that stuff, right? That hero was 10,000 years before the events of Breath of the Wild.
Oh, okay.
And the mural has this beast in the center that looks like Calamity Ganon. On the left, there is presumably an ancestor of Zelda, maybe like the goddess that was the beginning of all of this. And on the right side, there's the hero. And the hero in that mural has long red hair, very angular nose, holding a big sword, and has a green sash-looking tunic, like flowing behind them. So people have been drawing comparisons for sure, like the long hair. Major difference out the gate. The mural is red hair. We all assumed it was Ganon 10,000 years ago, and maybe something happened. This second Link in the trailer is blonde, but that could be a simple asset swap that happens in things, you know? But
Sure.
like, how familiar were you with the theory that Ganon was the original hero all those years ago?
I never heard that theory, or I probably did, but I can't remember it at all.
Okay.
So that was a thing people have been thinking about.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's weird because we're about to crack open like Zelda timeline stuff, which I know you are not interested in really.
Oh, like, yeah, I mean, well, okay. I'm not interested in the level of. I think Breath of the Wild acknowledges it, right?
Yeah,
I think so. I think I have to acknowledge it too for this case.
yeah,
But I think you do have to look at it and understand that a lot of it was retroactive, right? Like them piecing together stuff. Like before, let's say before Twilight Princess or before Skyward Sword, I always thought or kind of figured that a lot of this seems like they are desperately trying to piece it together within its own fiction,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Like yeah. I don't know when that happened. I think it was before. It was definitely before Skyward Sword.
Yeah. I think.
But
Sorry.
Skyward Sword acknowledges it too,
Yeah.
if I might say. Yeah.
So with the 3D games, it's pretty straightforward, I think, for the most part, because like there's Ocarina, and then because the time travel in that game, it works so you have the path that has Wind Waker and the Wind Waker spin-offs, and then you have the path that is Majora's Mask, which is followed by Twilight Princess. And there is enough connections there in those games that you can, like, that's reasonable, I think, because it's the same Ganon in
Sure.
those titles. So, to that extent, I think the 3D games from Ocarina to Skyward Sword did have a pretty solid connection. And then Skyward Sword is like, hey, we're making a big deal out of this now. And this is where it all starts. So, Fujibayashi was the director of Skyward Sword, I believe. Also of Breath of the Wild, creative director, I think, for like story and stuff, and is also in the same role for Breath of the Wild 2. And because Skyward Sword is releasing this year again, people are saying that there's some work that's being done to sort of complete the whole timeline and maybe make it cyclical to the point where the whole thing with Skyward Sword is that there's Demise, right? That's like the proto-Ganon. And then a curse is created to make it so every 100,000 years, whatever, there's a new Zelda, there's a new Link, and they gotta do this whole thing again. It all starts with the end of Skyward Sword. So, the assumption is that the original Ganon is the hero from 10,000 years ago in Breath of the Wild. And then potentially we could be playing in a game that takes place before Skyward Sword, where we see these floating islands in Breath of the Wild 2. And that hero we're playing as then is Ganon, so we'll see like the rise of Ganon eventually being possessed by Demise after Skyward Sword. and then the Breath of the Wild, Blue Tunic, Link, and Zelda stuff is the present day. So it's like another Zelda that's dealing with time travel or hopping between two different eras. Do you see the connections growing there a little bit?
You cut off for me. Yeah, I do. I think you cut off for me a little bit after you said you see the Zelda.
Sure, yeah. Like you see the Blue Tunic, Link, and Zelda in modern day.
Uh-huh.
It's reintroducing another Zelda game with different eras, like time travel, sort of. So the stuff in the Golden Land in the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer is 10,000 years ago, is Ganon when he was the hero, building probably at some point in this game to the point where Skyward Sword happens, Demise corrupts Ganon, and then we move on with the series. So, like, it's sort of a sequel and a prequel to Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild.
That sounds neat. I mean, like, I'm interested. I think that sounds cool. I mean, Ocarina of Time does some cool stuff with the time travel stuff in terms of, like, you need to solve this puzzle, but you gotta do it as a kid. But then it's still changed when you're an adult, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I can see that being a cool mechanic. Or if they go crazy on it, like, I don't know, if there's like instant realm switching or something like that. But yeah, I think it'd be wild if that was Ganon we're playing as, for sure. Would it be messed up if we play as Ganon before Zelda?
I think in this specific, like the Breath of the Wild take, no. But on a grand scheme of things, yes.
Okay.
Because, like, I think with Breath of the Wild, it's interesting because if you're doing something for Ganon to, like, humanize him and, like, get away from Link always being the hero and just showing, like, corruption and stuff like that, I think, like, that was a big theme of Breath of the Wild 1, like, corruption. I have no idea how Zelda factors in because she does just straight up fall into a ditch in that trailer.
Right.
But yeah, like, there's a ton of other things that people are trying to draw connections to, but so far it seems like you think this could be plausible.
I think so. I mean, I'm looking at it from a market level, right? High brain here, but you think about how Joker took off, really. I feel like they probably have been dying for playable Ganon.
Yeah. Probably.
Like Cruella too. Like, it's the rise of villain origin stories, you know? It's time to go.
Yeah, and I think the main thing for me that stood out, I established it at the top, right? But, like, the fact that we don't see long hair Link's face, it's completely different visually with the golden areas, the sky islands, and we do see modern day Hyrule. The only thing floating is the castle. We see Blue Tunic Link's face, like, we see all that stuff, and I'm wondering, it's so different from each other that I feel like the people that have quote-unquote evidence for this are selling me on this idea. You know, even though it seems like it's something that's too cool for Nintendo to actually do. You know?
What if it's just like, because I think getting to the fact that Link looks different, what if it's like that time travel story where it's, Link in current day timeline finds some portal or whatever, gets sent back 10,000 years, and he has to, like, inherit one of his, like, ancestors or something.
Like Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, something like that.
Sure. I guess, like, I could maybe see something like that, yeah.
Because it's like, in Ocarina of Time, the time travel isn't like, you get sent back as a being. It's more like your spirit gets sent, right? And it takes the form of either kid you or adult you.
Right. So there is a couple more connections people have been drawing to Skyward Sword. I don't know if you've seen these, but
let's hear it.
Apparently, in the Sky Islands in Breath of the Wild 2, there are, like, some egg-shaped lamps that I believe are connected to Skyward Sword in terms of just environmental things that you can use to teleport around the sky or something like that. So there's that element. Also, I'm sure you saw this. Aonuma said that this game has a title right now, but revealing the title would be a spoiler because people would be able to like he said, I think his direct quote was, you'll understand too much about what you're doing in the game right now.
Okay, but I feel like we will have to find out what the title is before we buy it.
Yeah.
But he thinks speculation of 2 years will be enough time for us to figure it out, or something, or a year.
Yeah, because
Okay.
like personally, I think with Skyward Sword being the big focus of this year, seemingly no Twilight Princess or Wind Waker re-releases within 2021. It's a little suspicious, I think, that I know that was the next in line, but there are other more celebrated games that were already ready to port their HD versions. So with the involvement of Fujibayashi, Sky Islands here, Skyward Sword getting a re-release this year and it being the focal point of the anniversary, and some of these other connections about the origin, Breath of the Wild's already murky placement in the timeline, there's a lot of people that I think are making some solid points. So
I feel like I'm more in the theory that Wind Waker and Twilight Princess were gonna happen this year, but or they need to happen before Breath of the Wild 2 happens, but they don't know when Breath of the Wild 2 is happening.
Sure.
So they keep getting pushed.
Yeah, that's fair.
Just like the Metroid Prime trilogy rumor. But yeah, did Fujibayashi direct Skyward Sword? Did you say that earlier?
I don't know if he directed, but I was listening to a little bit of an explanation from Barrett Courtney of Kind of Funny, because he's really been going off on this specific theory. He was saying Fujibayashi's his Zelda games are Breath of the Wild, Skyward Sword, and Breath of the Wild 2. So I don't know if he's a narrative designer or something like that, but
I see.
Heavy involvement. And yeah, I could maybe honestly I could see a world where, because Breath of the Wild was so isolated kind of with its story outside of that whole 10,000 years ago thing to tie it to things, it becoming so celebrated, and then re-releasing Skyward Sword, which is sort of the, for most people, least favorite 3D Zelda, and then using those elements to sort of retroactively make that one better in the Breath of the Wild sequel. I could kind of see them try and do that, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. I think, Skyward Sword re-releasing is probably an inevitability, right? I think they've re-released all those games except for that one.
Yeah, that was the last one.
Right. But yeah, I do like the idea that it's someone there is very bitter, being like, "You fuckers didn't get it the last time, and now you will." So, yeah, I think that's because honestly, I think that's what they did with Wind Waker HD.
Yeah, honestly, you're right. I think because I mean, I just would love that to happen to the DS Zeldas at one point. Just, it's like, hey, you know what? now it's a higher resolution. They're not as grody, and maybe you're gonna like them now because those are good. Those are good Zeldas.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, do you think though that this might be too far off for what they could be doing? Zelda's becoming this bigger franchise for Nintendo. Zelda, I think Breath of the Wild has sold more than Mario Odyssey has on the Switch.
Yeah, I think, Breath of the Wild was part of the reason it got so big, I think, is part of the accessibility of it, right?
Yeah.
It was a great starting point for people who didn't. I mean, I feel like there always are great starting points, but that one more so felt like, it was the reboot of the formula. Reboot of, all that shit was so far in the past. In that game's context, people just didn't care about the timeline stuff or anything like that. It definitely does seem weird to now go and say hey, you better be into this shit.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it though, because since similar to how Breath of the Wild is so far removed, I think Skyward Sword is also story-wise.
Sure.
Skyward Sword, I don't have my Zelda encyclopedia near me, but the timeline in there, it's changed a bit since that book released, but Skyward Sword's at the very beginning, and then after that it's a 4 swords game, and like one other thing, and then Ocarina. So like in that time span, I think there are thousands of years. So it's separated enough, I think, to the point where just like Breath of the Wild was, you get people in on Skyward Sword this year, see like, oh, this is how it all began, this is the origin. And for Breath of the Wild 2, you only touch on plot threads of Breath of the Wild 1 and Skyward Sword. I think that's a way they could do this that would make it clean and not be off-putting to people that are like, so what happens with like Twilight Princess and Majora's Mask and Link's, like, how do these all factor in?
Sure, yeah, I think you're right because Skyward Sword is if they want to make one of them like established canon, that's probably the one, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And I think the suggestion of how Breath of the Wild 2 would end up being a sequel and prequel would end up being, timeline-wise, we have 10,000 years ago Ganon that we're playing as in the Sky Islands in the sequel. Whatever happens for Ganon fighting that beast in the mural all those years ago, that happens. Skyward Sword happens, and then Demise begins the whole cyclical curse of the three powers. Eventually finds his way to Ganon as a host, and that corrupts him, and then Calamity Ganon forms from that, and then we have Breath of the Wild followed by the modern day stuff in Breath of the Wild 2, if that makes sense.
So this would explain why Ganon has always been evil.
Yeah, like Skyward Sword did that a little bit, but I think this would show that Ganon originally was a hero and just like fell. So
That'd be cool because replaying Ocarina of Time, like he's depicted as like the evil desert man. No, sorry, not replaying, playing it for the first time.
Yeah.
It's like that'd be cool if he was. I don't know. I'm looking at that and I kind of want to believe it because it sounds a bit insane.
yeah,
But also, I think in terms of like just mechanically, I think if they start doing like some crazy time stuff where I don't know if it's like you play as Link in the current time, swap to Ganon to figure out a puzzle and go back and forth, like something like that. I don't know.
yeah, that could be very fun. Another thing that ties some of this together, I saw. This one is not related to the speculation, right? But this morning, Gene Park tweeted something out. Just more of a hope, I think, than anything else. But I'll try and pull it up. It was basically the idea that Ganon, like dehydrated Ganon, under the castle from that original trailer, right?
No one redeemed his Twitch channel point reward.
What was that?
I'm sorry, I was trying to make a joke about no one redeemed hydrate on Twitch for him. I didn't know he didn't hydrate. He was dehydrated.
Yeah,
in
like
that trailer?
the mummified Ganon, right? That
Oh,
comes
right,
to
okay.
life. So
Sure.
another, if you want to draw another connection though, that Ganon is wearing an outfit that is very similar to that long-haired Link in the past, like green sash, exact same thing. Similar poses happen in that trailer and this one for modern day Link, but besides the point.
That seems so. That seems like they're just giving it to us. Then I feel like,
Right?
yeah, but then there's that Anuma quote about no, we can't give it to you yet. Like, did they not give it to us? I don't get it.
I don't know. Maybe it's two links, two breaths. I don't know. Maybe that's the title.
Oh shit.
But so
A Link. No, Breath of Too Wild.
Ooh, that's good. That is
Thank
very
you.
good.
Two Breath of Wild.
Two Breath, Too Wild.
Yep. Yep.
Perfect. So drawing it to that original trailer, right, and to just talking about Ganon and showing how he's been screwed over, which Wind Waker does a lot of that to characterize Ocarina of Time Ganon in interesting ways. But Gene Park is suggesting for this new one, if Ganon really was the hero, he said Ganon's corpse is dehydrated, mummified, because Hyrule was using his Triforce of Power as a renewable energy source, which is why he turned the kingdom's weapons against itself down the line. It's why the king was so against Zelda pursuing science, because he didn't want her to find out the truth of everything. Which, that is...
So we were the bad guy in
Yeah,
Breath of the Wild?
We're the baddies.
That's interesting. I mean, like,
That one's more.
I feel like it,
Sorry,
what?
sorry to cut you off. That one is absolutely more like speculation theory of like this is a cool way to look at the game we already played. But I thought it would be fun to tie it in just because Ganon being the hero who's been screwed over and becomes evil is sort of the theme of that original one. But sorry, go ahead.
The theory in Breath of the Wild, or was it fact that uh, they were using Ganon's corpse or whoever that corpse was as a renewable energy source?
Mm-hmm.
That was like in there. That was in the story.
So I think in Breath of the Wild there was Calamity Ganon, right? It was just the big pig.
Hmm.
And then when we got inside the castle, it was this morphed being. I don't know if there was ever speculation or theorizing about that Ganon being used for power. I know the Calamity infected the Guardians, which were built by the Sheikah, in that story, and eventually because the Calamity corrupted them, that's why they turned on everybody. That's why they fight Link. But yeah, I think seeing the trailer for Breath of the Wild 2 originally, that was one of the theories of maybe Ganon is being held there with that hand, right? As a means to just keep him imprisoned. Maybe it's draining his life force, but that was absolutely something people discussed.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like, in stories that always use something they shouldn't as like an energy source, you know who the villain is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's a whole laundry list of speculation I've seen for Breath of the Wild 2 off this trailer since it premiered, but this to me I think is the most interesting. And
I like the idea. Sorry, I cut you off
no,
here,
go ahead.
but I like the idea. I always like the idea that the villain and the hero came from two very similar places,
Mm-hmm.
so we can get a line of dialogue that's like, "You and I, we're not so different."
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like that's always the mark of a good story, right? It's why Liquid and Solid Snake are so sick.
Exactly, yeah. So, another thing, too, that I thought of before I read more of this, like, oh, maybe we're just jumping between eras and this is a prequel slash sequel. I was wondering if, because we see Link's arm get possessed in that initial trailer, and we do see Link using his arm as the Sheikah power in the trailer for Breath of the Wild 2, like when he stops that orb. I've seen some people saying, like, oh, of course it's Link in the past because he's got the arm, the way that modern day Link has the arm. Talking about cyclical and talking about you're not so different
Metal
than
Gear
I.
Solid 2.
Maybe.
Okay.
I could see a world where, because, Zelda is so much about time travel, that maybe this whole timeline is actually a circle. And, like, Link from... This was my original idea before I found this stuff. Link gets corrupted by the arm, right? And eventually becomes that Ganon that was frozen there by the hand under the castle, If that makes sense. And like it just is all a circle. Like the timeline isn't a timeline at all, it's just a loop. I don't know how that would work out, but that was my initial thought.
Yeah. Would you be into that?
I think that'd be a lot messier than this one we've been discussing. I think it'd be very cool if like it ends on that revelation, just like if we could manage to get that and then credits, super cool. Don't have to think about it too much, but I think this is much more interesting if we're seeing like the plights of Ganon and why he got screwed over and wanted to destroy Hyrule. I think that's way more interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the time loop stuff for me, like, I think is neat, like academically. Like,
Yeah.
whoa, this stuff does fit in nicely together. But then it always leaves me in a place of like, well, what is this trying to say?
Yeah.
Like, is it just that things are bad and they're always going to be like this?
Mhm.
Is that the lesson? Or I mean, I guess it's up to if this is the way to go to how they pull it off. But some of this comes from like a little bit of. I think time travel is cool, but the way it can affect stories sometimes can feel like an actual like cancer in terms
Yeah.
of like figuring out like, okay, what does this mean for that? What does that mean for this? Like, why was it like this way? Like, I mean, it made the Zelda timeline so crazy, or Ocarina. It sounds like,
Mm.
um, I don't know. I
No,
just kind of rambling. Yeah.
no, but I think you're right, right? Like, it's very messy, and I think for all these new Zelda fans who do want to know more about the lore, because Breath of the Wild, I think for better or worse in many different ways, excelled by ostracizing the story and the timeline.
Hmm.
Um, I definitely didn't love the way the story was handled when I was experiencing the story, but I think it just benefits everything else so much. So I know there's so many new fans that just get really invested with the series lore that like learned everything they could about Breath of the Wild, and I think making sort of a neat, nice trilogy kind of Breath of the Wild, Skyward Sword, and Breath of the Wild 2 would be interesting. And I know we all thought that would be the direction with like Age of Calamity, uh, but I guess it would make more sense for the Zelda team to just retroactively make one. It's like, oh, so that's the one that's like the in between first one, and then the two you just played are the other parts of this trilogy. Don't ask us how the trilogy flows, but it's a trilogy, you know.
Right. And I mean, like, judging by the way Breath of the Wild did story,
Mm-hmm.
like it's very much like kind of not there in a lot of places, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how many hours of cutscenes are actually there, but it's probably like less than an hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I wonder, like, I probably wouldn't be if it is a story that I'm not really into in terms of the going crazy with the time loop stuff.
Yeah.
It's probably only going to be there for people who really want to read into it, right?
I imagine, but I think it might be a bit more uh, present than it was in Breath of the Wild.
That'd be cool too. I'd be curious of how they do it.
Because, like, I think with a sequel, right, for Breath of the Wild's sake at least, if you're doing a follow up, I think inherently there's going to be a bit more story to tell.
That's true.
Where you're following up these characters who were established in the first game, were not fully fleshed out in ways that everybody was satisfied with, but throwing them in a new scenario, I think you're going to have to explore at least different themes, and I think with that you might have to change up the way you tell the story if you're not changing how the game flows too much. Um, you know?
Which do you think the way the game hasn't flowed too much is? Do you think that's? Do you think we could read into that? Like, does it look like it's more similar to Breath of the Wild than you expected, or
Um,
like? Because I feel like, all right, I'll put out my case first.
sure.
Um, I think we talk about how I want this game to be weird, or we both wanted this game to be kind of like weird in
Yeah.
a lot of ways.
Dark.
Um, yeah, dark in your follow up from Ocarina of Majora's, right? Like make something insane.
Yes.
And it looks proper weird,
Yeah.
but in not the ways we were talking about, right? Like
Mhm.
it seems like the weirdness is coming from the story aspects and potentially there's something with the time travel stuff if there's a weird aspect there, but like you know we were talking about the other day like yeah, make it like a weird ass like roguelike or something in terms of like
Yeah.
dying and something like there, but it seems like, and I feel like when they take this much time from Zelda entries too, they probably have to make it less weird too, right? Like if this game is coming out like 4 or 5 years after Breath of the Wild, it's gotta satisfy a lot more people than say Majora's Mask did when it was like a year or two after Ocarina of Time and they had time to make it weird. Like I feel like this probably has to be a sequel that still appeases everyone now, right? With
Yeah.
as much time has been since the last one. I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, I get what you're saying. Like, so much time has passed that, like, the expectation for just a standard Zelda is sort of lingering. Is that...
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, yeah, I definitely can see that. But I do think with what we've seen so far, it's definitely weird. I think the way it's been framed so far is darker than anything we saw in Breath of the Wild 1.
For sure. And like I don't want to sound like, I'm not being like
No, you're...
the skies are bright in this one, and I
Yeah.
wanted it to be red.
No, no, no. I completely understand. Well, yeah,
Which I kind of did want that too, though, to be honest.
no, I hopped back in the other day for the first time in a while, and the blood moon happened, and I forgot that happens, and I was like, oh man, the first time I saw this, I got chills. So yeah,
Yeah, that
um,
game's great.
it really is. But no, I think you have a point. The only thing is, I also think that with a sequel to Breath of the Wild, I feel like the stakes are gonna have to be higher, and it doesn't look like we're getting this mischievous, gigantic beast. So I feel like if we're not going to reiterate that, then what we would do is a bit more personal or more focused on story or narrative or character than just like uh, Empire State Building sized Pigman is destroying the kingdom, you know? Like,
Yeah.
because I think we saw that pretty early in the Breath of the Wild trailer circuit, right? Like this, we really don't have a big threat right now.
Well, Christian, you led me in here with the prospect of talking about Metal Gear Solid 2,
Yes,
and I don't know when you want to do that,
we can do it now.
but okay, because like I feel like that is Metal Gear Solid 2 to Metal Gear Solid, right?
Yes.
2 is that way more personal tale, and it uses the devices of like the big story stuff of Metal Gear Solid, and you know plays with it and also minimizes it in a way where it's like, yeah, there's a comical threat in Metal Gear Solid about global nuclear warfare or whatever. But in 2, it's like everyone is brushing that aside, being like, "Well, I didn't hear anything about what is a bioweapon or something? The oil spill disaster that they keep implying,
Right.
right? Like, and yeah, I think it'd be cool, like in terms of your time loop theory too, if they keep playing around like um, the events of the other one actually don't matter, but they just keep happening. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah, I don't know. What did you have any specific points on Metal Gear Solid 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've come across a couple more in our discussion too of like, I think if Metal Gear Solid 1 is Breath of the Wild, right, and the big threat is this looming energy crisis, right? Let's just say that's what it is, being very reductive.
Sure.
With Breath of the Wild and MGS1, you have your hero that goes through it. Everything goes all right, pretty simple, straightforward, saves the day, cool. The sequel, I think, Raiden would be Ganon in this case. Like, Raiden is this young Ganon that we're playing as potentially in the past. When we're playing as young Ganon, like, we're a hero, you know? Like, if that theory of Breath of the Wild 1's mural is true, and 10,000 years ago, the original hero was Ganon. Ganondorf, technically, but, whatever.
Gandalf.
Gandalf, sure. Like, we're playing that game using the mechanics of Breath of the Wild, potentially Skyward Sword, as Ganondorf, sort of following up the Breath of the Wild and Skyward Sword MGS1 in this metaphor. And then, surprise, you end up playing as this different character that's not Link. Again, Raiden stepping in, forefront. Going through, I guess, very literally the same gameplay, same sort of navigation through the world, except narratively, this character, Ganon the hero, is being manipulated by a power beyond the player's control, which would be like Fox Sound versus, or like the King of Hyrule, right? Like, hey, Ganon.
GW.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, the king is GW, right? And he's like, Ganon, you're a hero. You have the Triforce of Power. You were gifted with that. I have a request of you. Please do these things. And then you're just going on your adventure as Ganon until the point where that green robotic hand clenches on Ganon's chest and sucks all the life out of him to power the kingdom of Hyrule. You know, like...
Dude,
Yeah.
Ganon, it was all about a girl, and she got sick. He didn't know what to do. He went looking, and he found his way into Shadow of the Colossus lands.
He's got the same
And that's
cloak.
what's happening. Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I cut you off again.
Well, that was the end of the direct comparison. Obviously, there's also Link's hand, Link's entire arm is probably being corrupted by Ganon. So
With Liquid Snake.
yeah, Liquid exactly. So I think the reason I framed it to you specifically is Breath of the Wild 2, the MGS2 of the Zelda series, is because I can't think of another Zelda game that so heavily relies on the first one in terms of gameplay and narrative. Like, you played a bit of Majora's Mask. I did too.
Yeah, I played a good half of it, I think, from what I understand.
Yeah.
I think I did beat 2 of the 4 dungeons, but
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, I got about as far, right?
Okay.
Majora's Mask, I think, is a normal sequel. It's not a Metal Gear Solid 2 sequel. You know? In terms of its ambition and remix on things. Like, it uses the same assets, the same controls, and it's just a weird side story. That's not the MGS2
No, for
of the
sure.
series, you know?
Metal Gear Solid 2 was like attempting to put a bow on the entire thing, I feel like.
Yeah.
Majora's Mask is like a creative asset reuse, like a very creative one.
Yes.
And I'm not putting it down like for that. I think it's genius, and it was bold to follow up on Ocarina of Time like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like they made Majora's Mask with the plan that they would get back to the real shit later.
Exactly.
I feel
yeah.
like.
And I think here, this game is potentially making a case for it to be the MGS2, which is like in reference to 2 games instead of just one, where it's trying to wrap up neatly this combo of Breath of the Wild, Skyward Sword, and Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah, I kind of love this from what you're saying so far. Reminds me of like even if it is like Ganon is possessing your arm too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like imagine if he's like, Portal 2 I thought was really great. How they gave what everyone wanted from the first game, more GLaDOS, but she was literally your companion in the second one,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was so smart. Like, I think that'd be neat, man. If like Ganon was like on your arm the whole time, being like, "Hey, fuck you. By the way, we gotta work together on this, but fuck you."
Yeah.
Like,
That'd be cool. Give Link a voice, but it's just Ganon's voice.
yeah, why not?
You know, like, I think the fact that Breath of the Wild was sort of a reset and Skyward Sword lore-wise is just so foundational to this made-up timeline that they could do something really interesting by playing off both. And maybe you're right, and I think you are right, of just it's a coincidence that Skyward Sword was ready for this year and they're holding the other 2 if they need to delay this game again. But I think directly because there is so many visual nods and references to Skyward Sword that there is something worth theorizing about with this. And it sounds like you agree.
Well, yes, but also I did say Skyward Sword was like coincidental in a lot of ways about coming out this year.
Mm-hmm.
But I also still feel like Skyward Sword is like very important to Breath of the Wild and always has been,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it was that same team basically, like at that point, who made both games. And Breath of the Wild 2 Breath of the Wild was very much like the anti-Skyward Sword in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think, but there was also like a lot there. I think, from what I understand, like story and kind of art-wise to me, but like maybe I don't know about the story, but Breath of the Wild it was very informed by Skyward Sword, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in a similar way of, I think, if you want to just talk story, I know people love the story of Skyward Sword. That is like not the complaint of that game.
Right.
And I wish I didn't read into it like 7 years ago, because I'd love to experience that completely with no knowledge for the first time, because it sounds wonderful. But I think it is the polar opposite in a narrative way too, like you're saying, because Breath of the Wild is so far removed in the future that nothing matters, and this is so far removed in the past that they could just make it up and be like, this is the origin of everything. So yeah, I definitely think there's something worth connecting with those, and maybe just forgetting about the other timeline, or maybe not forgetting, but not acknowledging it anymore. Just being like, yeah, that exists, but it doesn't matter because we have this 1, 2, 3 combo of the origin, the end, and then a bridge to both of those things.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Like, yeah, I said it just now, but it always seemed like Breath of the Wild was a super sequel to Skyward Sword.
mhm.
Like, the 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 stuff connecting those two seems very close to me.
Yeah,
Like,
and I'll throw that out there to support you too. Like when when Skyward Sword HD was revealed, remember Aonuma being like, in many ways, it's very similar to Skyward Sword. This was the beginning where we found the stamina meter in this
right.
game, you know? So, like, I think there's enough of, like, connections being drawn from Nintendo in, like, a marketing way and from this trailer, presumably in a in-universe way, that there's some weight here, you know?
Yeah.
So, I guess the big question I want to throw your way after talking through this stuff: does this change your excitement or interest level in playing Skyward Sword this summer?
um, I think it does. Honestly, I think I'm pining to get my hands on it now.
Yeah, man.
But you know me personally in terms of what I've been up to in terms of playing these games, and I think I still need to play at least Wind Waker and Twilight Princess before I get here.
Sure.
So maybe I'll try and cram those in sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
But no, I think Skyward Sword is probably the one I want to get my hands on the most at this point
Yeah.
and figure out what's happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, this conversation kind of fucked me up on that level.
I mean, I think I said this when we watched the direct back in February, but because of the way people talk about it and because it's always the butt of the joke, I feel like there's a world where Skyward Sword might secretly be the best Zelda, and I've been excited, right? I want to see that for the first time. I didn't play it on the Wii. It's the only 3D Zelda I have no experience with, so yeah, I pre-ordered it a couple days ago, and I'm looking forward to.
There was another
checking it
game
out.
that month everyone bought.
In
I think.
2011. Oh, Skyrim, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think it was they're both November 2011.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I was like off the Nintendo scene at that point because of my friend group of just like, oh yeah, no, we moved on to like Xbox and PlayStation. So
You got influenced.
I did get influenced, and I wish I didn't, because boy, if I played Skyward Sword in 2011 and was a fan of it, and then heard all this stuff about how it's actually going to be so critical to everything, I would be so happy.
You can't know though, like in
No.
terms of like, because I think a lot of people like I might have tried emulating Skyward Sword at the time, like still fell off of that game for some of the tutorialization stuff.
Sure.
Like even if you made the choice back then, you don't know.
You're right.
But yeah, definitely excited to give it another shot. I guess. Do we know if the remaster is like addressing some of that stuff? It seems like it is, right? Like Fi doesn't talk to you as much or something.
So,
Like,
I mean, we haven't really gotten a good display of the game, I feel like. Just a lot of tweets. But
Right.
I remember, like...
did they not do a treehouse thing for it this week?
I don't think so. I didn't tune into the whole thing,
Alright.
but I didn't see a notification about Skyward Sword.
I see.
I remember the infamous, like, Master, the batteries in the Wiimote are dying. Like, that's not gonna happen. There's no batteries anymore.
No.
You know?
Well, there are,
Well, yeah,
but like you just recharge them.
yeah.
But like, I mean, have they not done a Joy-Con thing is running low before? I didn't play 1-2 Switch.
Not in game, but just like a little, like the way the PlayStation does it too. Of just like you get a little flash card in the top left. It's like boop boop.
Right. I mean, I feel like the Master, the batteries are dying thing was very much not even because of the batteries, but that was very much that era Nintendo, right?
Yeah.
Where they thought like everyone playing their shit was new to video games.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I assume there's less of that
Yeah,
in this one.
I did see a tweet that I thought could be implying something. Where I remember people talking about Fi being very handholdy in a way that like Navi was as well. Probably like cranked up though, because like you said, everybody's new to this in their eyes.
Yeah.
The tweet I saw was like, "Hey, if you're stuck, call on your companion Fi," and it was very much like I'm doing a thing in game, I'm pulling up a menu, I see save, I see tips/hint, and like two other options, and I don't know if those were in the original, but it stood out to me. I was like, oh, that's interesting. You can just like specifically go out of your way to ask for a hint. Maybe they're not going to be
Yeah.
forced on you. I don't know.
There's nothing worse than like spending a few minutes on a puzzle and almost arriving at the solution yourself, and then like you get a hint telling you what to do, just spoiling it for you right beforehand. So that sounds cool.
Yeah, so if that's like trimmed down to just be more of an optional help, the only negative I've heard about Skyward Sword really is just that like people were wishing that the Sky Islands had more stuff to do on them. Which like I'm cool with. It's an old game at this point. I won't bother me, I imagine. But
Sure. I mean, I will also say I feel like some of the negative conversation with Skyward Sword was also like people getting sick of that formula, right? Like after so many entries that were kind of the same thing.
right.
But now, I mean, now it feels like it's flipped back, where it's like some people out there, too vocal maybe about it, are going, "I want that formula back." And
Yeah. And to its credit, I hear people praise the dungeons of Skyward Sword. I hear people say the dungeons in Skyward Sword are like pound for pound, maybe the best ones in
I do hear that as well.
the series. So yeah, if they can just maybe just the quality of life of just being on a different console and having a little bit of work done to it, maybe you could just trim the dead leaves on this game and make it shine the way it could have, I guess.
Yeah.
And
You
plus
see that-
no motion control, or motion controls are optional now, so that's I'm sure going to be great for a lot of people. I'll be playing it.
Was that the issue for people, or was that just like people being crazy in 2011? Like, was that just people being nuts? Because like, I don't think the motion controls was like the problem there, right? Maybe I know people make jokes about Wiimote waggle.
Yeah.
They always did back then, and it was always insane. I feel like because like
No, yeah.
games use that differently from one another, and Skyward Sword especially was not waggle, right? It was like
Yeah, like Twilight Princess was Waggle because that was a GameCube
Right.
game, you know?
right.
Like,
That was like a simple mod, like
yeah. Like I don't know, because I mean, I for sure in 2011 I thought motion controls were stupid because that's what I heard online and in my friend groups.
Sure.
But yeah,
and like Microsoft made it lame.
yeah, but like I've really I loved them before that point, and I love them now when they're done well with Nintendo stuff. So like, yeah, I think Skyward Sword. I'm excited to play it split Joy-Con based on what I've seen, the Joy-Con demotion wise. So
I'm happy they're doing like they're including the non-Joy-Con stuff too for like accessibility and like people who have
Yeah.
Switch Lites. But like, look, I feel like if you got the means to try it out, right? Like, I don't know.
yeah, for sure. And
I hated posting online in those years.
it's like, you know how there's a large group of people that are probably our age or maybe a little younger that grew up with the prequels of Star
Right.
Wars, and now you go online, there's nothing about prequel love.
Yeah,
I think that's the same thing about motion controls.
I have to disagree with you there. Or, all right, I think the Star Wars prequels are really cool in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because we did grow up on them, but also like the filmmaking is so personal and weird. Even though I do think it is bad,
Yes.
and I think motion controls were not bad. They were used wrong in a lot of ways.
Sure. No.
But-
I was more comparing it just like generationally. Like,
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry for jumping on you about the prequels.
yeah.
Yeah. Now there's kids like I don't know. There's a kid older than like about 9 months older than me that says Revenge of the Sith is his favorite movie of all time, but also likes Paul Thomas Anderson movies and like is going through like I don't know classic other.
Is it
There's
me?
arguments.
Is this me?
Is that you?
Is it?
I don't think you like Paul Thomas Anderson movies.
They're okay.
Okay. Well then, sure, it's you as well. But it was
Okay.
actually my friend Charlie,
Okay.
which he's got one favorite film on Letterboxd, and it's Revenge of the Sith, which I think is really funny to me.
Yeah, that's cool.
But no, I see what you mean. I think it is our generation, right? Like it is kids our age who are the ones defending the prequels online.
I'll defend motion controls the same way.
Man, and like it's happening with Metal Gear Solid 2 now too. I feel like where it's like I used to be bullied. I not bullied, but like, if I was definitely not bullied for this, but just saying like the conversation with Metal Gear Solid 2 online was a lot of people going like, "You were insane for thinking this is the best one, 3 and 4," but now they all get it.
Yeah.
Now everyone's on my side, and it's annoying. So I have to go and pretend I like Metal Gear Solid 3 the most now, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I just gotta flip back. Same with Avatar.
Exactly the same with Avatar.
Yeah.
But I mean, hopefully with the sequel to Breath of the Wild Unnamed, it is not one of those instances where people are just like, "This is shit," when it's clearly the best Zelda game ever made. Like I
Oh, you're talking about Breath of the Wild fans or
no, Breath of the Wild
people
2.
who don't like it?
No, if Breath of the Wild 2 is going for MGS2, if it's going for revisionist Skyward Sword stuff, like, hopefully it's received as cool as it could be if all this stuff is actually what we get out of it, but...
Oh, the thing I learned with Zelda 2 is there's no way to actually tell how people like it depending on the reception.
Yeah.
Like, I still think people are crazy for not liking Breath of the Wild, but, you know, maybe not, but, you know, the conversation with Skyward Sword online being like, this is too much of this same formula, right? Then we get Breath of the Wild, and now there's enough people going, I want that old formula back.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's no satisfying people, right? Which is fine.
I'm fully expecting the same people that hated Skyward Sword. I'm expecting glowing Skyward Sword discussion this July. Like, I'm expecting to see very little negativity about that game when it re-releases.
Really?
Yeah.
You think people will go out there and be like, I was wrong?
No, I think they're gonna be like, I was always saying this, guys. You should have been listening to me. It's the best one. Like,
sure.
If I feel that way, I'll feel fine saying that because I never got to play it. But
yeah, no, I never. I mean, the reason I never got it in 2011, even though I was kind of plugged into the games back then, is I wanted to pre-order that gold nunchuck from GameStop.
Yeah, that was nice.
Remember that, the gold Wiimote, and I could never get it, and just never checked it out. Also, I wasn't playing my Wii too much back then because I did not like the way it looked on HD TVs, and I didn't have a CRT anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I've enjoyed going through this theory rabbit hole with you.
Me too. I have one more question before we
Yeah.
wrap it up, if you don't mind. But I did see your tweet saying, like, maybe it was a conversation you had with Jack from our Long Play Club and all the Joy-Click stuff about this being Metal Gear Solid 2. Was it mostly about, like, a protagonist swap?
Protagonist swap and remixing isn't the right word, but, like, the way it treats its predecessor.
Sure, that's a good point about remixing the you know, Metal Gear Solid 2 plays in that same exact Shadow Moses scenario, right?
Yeah.
And if they're taking the actual world from from Breath of the Wild 1, maybe they do some crazy shit there too. I don't know.
Yeah. So.
Fuck, Metal Gear Solid 2 is so good.
Yeah, man. So I think for a number of reasons, there's a chance that it could be this for this series the way MGS2 was for that one, but it began with the protagonist swap, and then it sort of spiraled into all these other things that we've been talking about for the last hour. So.
Yeah, like Metal Gear Solid 2 uses that protagonist swap, like, to really further that game's message, right?
Yeah.
Which I feel like, you know, maybe there's been another game that tried to do something similar, which was really impressive in a lot of ways for it, but maybe didn't sell it quite as hard as Metal Gear Solid 2 did, right? Like, I love a fun protagonist swap, but I really love it when they really make the world out of it, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I guess that's the end of sort of where all this theorizing's out right now. So, I don't know if you want to do a check-in if we both play Skyward Sword this year and just see if there's any more connections or anything, but
it might be a bit for me. I'm thinking it could be like but
December,
I'd be down.
maybe, but
Sure. Maybe you play it when it comes out. You enjoy it, but I might be there like months later, and I'll just call you and be like, "Hey, what the fuck is going on?"
No, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't have to be any time soon. Just like before the sequel comes out, you know, like we can check in on a lot of the things we talked about and see if there's more connections.
So definitely not anytime soon, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. So, well, all right.
There's no way that game is 2023, right? There's no way.
I hope not, but like some of the people saying that it could be, I think there's a chance.
I mean, they're reputable. But
Yeah.
if Breath of the Wild 2 comes out after Starfield, I'm gonna be mad.
Yeah.
Like, someone's getting my fists. And I don't know who. It might be you, Christian. It might be someone else. I don't know.
Fair enough. But
I gotta punch a wall or something. I don't know.
sure thing. Uh, well, Omar, thank you for discussing this nonsense with me. It was very fun. Um,
Yeah. Thank you for the inspired idea.
oh, of course, yeah. So, where can everybody find you?
I have a Twitch channel called twitch.tv/ohmsachef, where I'm playing Kingdom Hearts right now. I assume this is going up tomorrow or something, Christian, but I should be streaming tonight. Um, but yeah, there's that. And, previously I played Ocarina of Time and like half of Majora's Mask on it. Probably playing Wind Waker and Twilight Princess before the year's over. So, yeah, check it out.
Very nice. I've been muted because there's a lawnmower right outside my window, but this should be posting today actually. So yeah, if you're wrapping this up and it's not too late yet, Omar's probably live, so check it out. But if you want to follow me on anything, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok at ChunTD2, and here YouTube.com/JoyClicks for more talk on Zelda, E3 wrap-ups. We got E3 awards going up on Gamescast this week, and a host of other things. But yeah, this was very fun. I'll probably do a Skyward Sword video at some point, but look forward to future Zelda talk here on JoyClicks and everywhere else we said. So, thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.
All good?